Hi, firstly sending apologies. I've had to pre-record this just because we're away playing in Europe with Newcastle, so I'm sure you'll forgive me. But I've been asked to basically put a presentation together to provide a little bit of insight and advice around insight around how I became a sport nutritionist and my journey and what that's entailed, as well as some advice around what the actual structure of departments might look like, some of the roles, responsibilities, any sort of other advice that I would give you if looking to get into sport nutrition. So like I said, really just how nutrition fits into the sort of performance department landscape, talking a bit about my journey and how I got to where I am, giving a little bit of advice and support on what I would look to focus upon if I'm looking to get a role in nutrition, and then also some of the different sort of prerequisites and skills that potentially you need to have to go into the role, into the organisation. So I have two main roles. My first role is full-time role, performance nutritionist with Newcastle Football Club, and as part of this, obviously we all sit underneath the sport director and the board, but then there's different departments. So we've got the performance department on the left, which is headed up by Dan Hodges. There's the coaching department, and I've just put the assistant manager in the circle for that, and we have head of medical, and those are probably the three main departments in terms of performance within a football club, and that's usually very similar club to club. Underneath the head of performance sits myself, who's a sports nutritionist. We have lead sports scientist, and we have our strength and conditioning team, of which there's three, one of which who specialises in the sports science and strength and conditioning aspect of goalkeepers, and we have someone who's our data analyst who looks after all of that side of things. Similarly, within England rugby, it's a same sort of structure. We all sit below, I guess, the board, and then we have our executive director of performance, who's Conor O'Shea, and underneath him, a gent called Duncan Locke, who is our interim head of performance services. So he's stepping in until someone fills that role. And then really there's three main strands. There's Pathway, which is myself, and I work alongside two S&C coaches in performance department, one of which is with the under-20s, one of which is with the under-18s. And then there's the senior men's strand, which is headed up by a gent called Graham Close. And then there's the Roses strand, which is headed up by what's termed an athletic performance manager, who is Robin Eager, and below him Amy O'Keefe. It's actually quite funny because the three nutritionists here are actually obviously Graham, who's part of Liverpool John Moores, myself, who's alumni, and then also Amy, who's also alumni. So John Moores seems to be the place to go at the moment for sports nutrition. Within the role itself, obviously there's a job description which includes things like individual diet planning, nutrition and programs, how you align nutrition to rehabilitation, undertaking body composition, and other sort of strategies to help support players around hydration, performance, loading for a game, what they do in the changing room, recovery from games, etc. But actually the role itself has very logistical aspects to it. So that would be, we have a lot of travelling to hotels, we have a lot of aeroplane travel, there's planning of menus for the training ground, there's a lot of like individual strategies that get fed back to everybody on an individual basis, which obviously takes a lot of work. But actually there's other things that crop up day to day, which are a little bit different. So obviously, like I've said, we have the individual meeting of players, and it might be as an individual, or it might be in group sessions, small groups like focus groups, or it might be taking what would be like a formal talk. Equally, you may also be required to do things like going on shopping trips to show players what sort of things they should be buying, cooking with, etc. And then also actually potentially even getting involved in the kitchen and taking of workshops. These are just two of the examples from my own practice that I've done previously. Like in pre-season and in hot weather, you might be really focusing on hydration strategies during training. But equally, you might be called into other things that aren't necessarily within your role, like helping take bike sessions. Could be something like holding pads for 115 kilo rugby players, which can be enjoyable or not enjoyable. It could be things like even helping design brand new kitchen facilities. You might be asked to go and actually set up changing rooms prior to players arriving to games before you actually compete. But it's really, really varied. It's very difficult for me to say these are the things we do day to day, because actually I think everybody within elite sport is very solution orientated. So we have problems, we find solutions, we get over it, we move on to the next thing. Another problem comes up with a different player, find a solution, move on. Something comes up logistically with travel, we find a solution, we move on, and it's very much plan, do, review. But obviously it's a very fast moving environment. And what I mean by that is that things change very quickly, and it's important that you sort of change with them. So yeah, nutrition can look very different, obviously place to place, but I would suggest that it's quite similar in many of the football teams. Currently at Newcastle United, I am the sport nutritionist. We have another nutritionist who's based with the academy, and we've got one starting shortly for our ladies team. But again, probably other organisations who are a little bit further along with certain things might have 5 or 6 across the organisation. But I'm sure that'll happen for us as we grow. In terms of, I guess, how I got here, I'm still quite a young practitioner. I would say that I'm 31. Had 10 years roughly working in elite sport. But I would say that's probably still quite young compared to a lot of my peers who I work alongside. How I started, I was actually a chef originally. So between 16 and 20, I was a chef while I was going to college. And also actually while I went to university. I started in a hotel where a lot of teams came to stay before they played Everton or Liverpool. So we've had the likes of Arsenal, Manchester United, who else? Real Madrid, even Everton and Liverpool themselves before big games used to come and stay at this golf resort. But a lot of teams used to use that as their main base. And that sort of piqued my interest a little bit in nutrition. However, as much as I'd like to say I went to university knowing that that's what I wanted to do, that isn't the case. Obviously then progressed into university, spent my undergraduate and my master's doing sports science and a master's in sport nutrition at Liverpool John Moores, and then progressed on to a PhD there eventually, which I finished last year. So really went through the normal academic route. Now, the sort of 2013-14 year for me was quite a defining one, and what I mean by that is I got my first opportunity to start doing some work in what I would class as an elite sport environment, which was Everton's Football Club's academy. Now, a couple of us during that season had the opportunity to actually work with the first team, and again, fortunate enough that I was selected for that. And I think that helped me start to understand what the sport environment is like in terms of the pressures, the people, the characters, etc. I'll come back to this, but it was my final year of my undergraduate, and that helped me gain some of that experience. Now, alongside that, I had 2 great mentors in these 2 gents who were also from obviously Liverpool John Moores. gent on the left is Graham Close, and the gent on the right is James Morton. They actually really helped me move towards and focus my interest in sport nutrition, and understand that was actually what I wanted to do. I did my undergraduate project with James, and Graham helped me with the write-up before publication, and the undergraduate project actually got published. But really, I think without these two, not only would I not be working in this environment today, but also I probably would have never even studied nutrition at all. Originally planned on leaving university and going to Edge Hill to study something like a PGCE in primary school education. But these two taught me into doing nutrition and not really looked back since, fortunately. In terms of teams, from that master's year, started to gain experience with Wasps Rugby Union straight away as the placement, which was great for me. I guess off the back of that, and I'd like to say hopefully doing good work. I presume so because I got a phone call to come and work with the pathway with England Rugby Union, so moved on to that. So I was doing Wasps, England Rugby Union, and actually also got my first paid role at Blackburn Rovers Football Club as their nutritionist during my master's year. So a very, very busy master's year. And then towards the summer, again, hopefully, I'd like to think they got a nice recommendation about what I was doing with Rugby Union, and got a call to work with the senior men's at England Rugby League. And this master's year also helped me sort of springboard into consultancy. So in terms of how nutrition works, there's a couple of strands of employment or not employment you can go down. I started off as a consultant, where I was consulting with different teams, getting paid what would be a day rate across the season. However, it's always a sort of rolling yearly contract. You're never quite sure if they're going to re-sign for the next year, which comes with perks because you can also move on, which you'll see shortly that each role sort of helped me springboard into the next. But also you can be obviously full-time employed, which is what I've moved towards. So these were the first 4 teams that I started working with. Again, what happened to me was certain people I worked with moved on to different roles, and they asked me to come and join them there, or they asked me to increase the amount of days I was doing. So say I was doing 50 days a year for one team, then it was 2 different teams, then 3 different teams, 4 different teams. So it ends up being once a week here, 2 days a week there, and you sort of build your portfolio of clients from there, a portfolio of organisations you work with from there. As I went through PhD, I moved on to different various roles. Worked with Toronto Wolfpack when they were about for a season or 2. Worked with Catalan Dragons with a gent called Rich Hunnix, who was the England Rugby League head of performance, who actually took me with him there. So I had some good success there as well. I worked with Fulham Football Club for 2 seasons, and Derby Football Club. Again, what usually happens in consultancy is you can work for 2 teams. However, usually, especially in football, they can't really be in the same league. So what happened to me was Fulham win the Premiership or Premier League, Derby win the Championship, and then Derby didn't go up, Fulham got relegated, and then I ended up moving on to a different Premier League team, and you can keep 2 teams as long as they're in different leagues. So I was with those guys for a couple of seasons. When I had to leave Fulham because of that conflict of interest, because I was at Chelsea Football Club, I also picked up some other work with Rugby Union, where I worked with London Irish, Sale Sharks, and actually remote work as well. So nutrition helps you with some remote aspects, or you have the availability to work remotely. So I worked with Sparta Prague remotely for 2 seasons as well. But now I've consolidated all those roles, and I am full-time with Newcastle United, which for the past 2 seasons has gone well. I left Chelsea at the end of 21-22, came to Newcastle for 22-23, and now we're in 23-24. So really enjoying it so far. Great team, great club, great coaching group and management group. Exciting place to be a part of. So I guess in terms of timeline, this is what the timeline would have looked like for me. Chopping and changing between roles, but really the constants are England Rugby Union remained, and obviously now I've taken Newcastle. That's going to be something that is a constant. But really, I guess the culmination of all these for me is some really good memories and some great success in European and domestic competitions. So enjoying what I do at the minute. In terms of, I guess, advice for anybody looking to get involved in nutrition and get a role in nutrition, I think the three main things that I would say will help you gain that role or get to where you want to be is, I think firstly, there's a lot of people that talk work-life balance and how you should have a good enough social life to balance what you're doing in work. In my opinion and from my experience, if elite sport is where you want to work and you want to be in it full time, then there isn't much work-life balance. You have to move around the world to get roles. You have to travel around the world to get roles. You go away for 3-4 weeks at a time in pre-seasons. You don't get holidays till the end of the year. There's a lot of things that you can't prioritize and you have to give up to actually do the role. So although the role's great, I think there are some not negatives, but some things you have to consider before you actually progress. I think just coming back to this, like I said I would before, I also think that the thing that makes you stand out and start to get roles is trying to think innovatively. I am a little bit embarrassed to show this, but at the same time, when I first applied for the role at Everton, there's 350 people applying potentially for this role. How do I stand out? So instead of an email, what I did was I got a shirt, put my name across the back like you would on a CV, and actually attached a flip chart of my CV onto the back of the shirt, and on the front I put something, a cover letter, and basically that I cut into sections and then again stuck on, and I put it in a box and I sent it to Everton just to try and get myself in a football team to begin with. And there was next to no pay, if any at all. We work in 3-4 days a week alongside studying in third year, so very, very busy year, but I think trying to think innovatively and different to other people is one of the things that hopefully makes you stand out a little bit. I think communication is vital. So the third thing would be communication. Learn little bits of other languages. Learn what players like and respond to. Learn how they talk, how they actually digest information. I think it's really, really important that you can communicate not only with the players but also in multidisciplinary teams, etc. So again, that would be my third really, really, really important thing to go and work on. And again, where I would find that stuff would be, there's lots of books on communication, psychology, etc. that can help. And then I guess finally, just in terms of some of the skills and experience you need, obviously, your university study and getting a master's is the most important thing. You will not work in elite sport if you do not have a master's in your preferred field that you want to specialise in. Alongside that, once you get your master's, you end up doing a portfolio for the Sport and Exercise Nutrition Register, which it tends to be on every single job description that is put out there nowadays. So really important that you do your studies, you get on the SCNR register, you get Isaac accredited. So body composition is weighted quite heavily within sport, rightly or wrongly, and there's obviously an optimal body composition to aim for, whether that's a prop forward. Their body composition will be a lot higher than a winger or a fullback in football, because the demands are very, very different. But actually the Isaac accreditation is something that helps you measure them and monitor them regularly. And again, a lot of roles within elite sport will say you need to be Isaac accredited. And then finally, I think it's not really a skill, but starting to gain that experience is important. It can start as something unpaid. I started unpaid for 1 or 2 years alongside studying and alongside working other jobs, like part-time roles as a bartender, as a chef, etc. But starting to get that experience is invaluable, no matter what level, whether it's a university team, whether it's a local team, but actually starting to put together what you foresee yourself having to put together in the future. And it's not wasted time either, because some of the resources and things that you'll develop during that experience can actually be reused. So I think really that's everything I've got to say in terms of understanding. Hopefully I'll be able to join you for a few questions depending on the timing of this, but if not, I apologise. The best places to get me are, I will let you know an email address, but it would be Andreas, spelt like in the slide, .Kasper, spelt like in the slide, @hotmail.co.uk. Or it would be probably Instagram's the thing that I interact with the most in terms of social media. And again, my username is obviously on the slide. So feel free to contact me. LinkedIn as well. But let me know any questions that you might have. Thanks, guys. Hopefully you got a little bit of insight from that.